Um, we are a bit behind schedule, but I'm sure my colleagues will catch up. So I give the floor now to Dionysis Tsimis. He has the pleasure to work with Lionel in coordinating the call. So he will give you now some advice of program office opinion. Don't take it with a piece of salt. It's coming from our experience working here with the experts. What do we see as a trend that experts like or do not like, and how to interpret the rules? Dionysis.
Okay, thank you very much, Mirella. Good morning, everyone. The title of my presentation is What Do Evaluators Want? Of course, that is the question that keeps you up at night, right? Rolling in your bed, stressing about the evaluation night. I'm sure that's the case. And I'm sorry to say, but this is an impossible question to answer. Experts, individually, they are the human factor, the human element of the evaluation, and cannot be predicted. But of course, when we look at the macroscopic scale, the grand scale of things, we see that they have some common tendencies. And we have been receiving some feedback from them after evaluating hundreds of proposals. And based on this feedback, we can give you some 5 main tips about how to structure your proposals and how to avoid common mistakes. So I'll jump into the first tip straight away. I think you've heard this about 62 times today. So here's the 63rd. Please read the topic very, very, very carefully. As you will notice, there are several sentences, small phrases. The proposal should, the proposal shall, the proposal must. Be careful, underline, take these all into account when you're phrasing your proposal in your minds. Make sure that you can tackle all these prerequisites and all these demands before you proceed to form your proposal. The calls are very competitive, and as Lionel mentioned before, the proposals that pass are usually of a threshold of 13 and above. So you must address all the should, the shall, the musts. All of these items must be addressed. Make sure that the topic is clear in your mind, so that you understand clearly all the elements of the topic. And of course, this is the day to do that. You feel free to ask us questions. You already did today, but also at the brokerage event later on. And we'll be happy to help clarify any issues that come up. We will be also happy to receive any questions you might have later on after today via email. And based on that, we will be publishing an FAQ section at the participant portal where you can visit it regularly. Another final tip for this is, as Lionel mentioned, the evaluation criteria is available to you. So please do take the time to look at the evaluation criteria, all the criteria and all the sub-criteria, to see what you're actually being assessed against. And finally, make sure when you look at the topic and you look at your proposal, make sure that they are in complete alignment before you move forward. So, tip number 2. That's an old version of the slide. It's okay. This is mainly about state-of-the-art and technology readiness levels. And this is a comment that we have often from the reviewers. The state-of-the-art is not clear. There are no justifications provided for the state-of-the-art that is claimed. The technology readiness level that is expected the project to start is not clear and is not justified. These are some of the main comments that we're seeing from the reviewers. And what is very important is that when you write your proposal and when you claim a certain technology readiness level, you can substantiate and you can justify building on that, referencing it, and making sure that you leave no doubt for the reviewers that they can say that the TRL is not justified. Make sure that you leave no doubt. Otherwise, you will be penalized for it. Additionally, please make sure that the approach that you follow and the path that you have from going to the first TRL at project start to the final TRL at project end is credible, and this, of course, where you put your science in to your proposal. Tip number 3, impact. Impact is essential. In Horizon 2020, as you are aware, we are looking for research projects that will develop results that will be exploited. We're not looking after research results that will stay onto the shelf. And this is often one of the most neglected areas of the proposals. So you can see this as your opportunity. You can really differentiate yourselves from other proposers by putting in the effort and developing this section. Try to look at the impacts that your proposal can have. Think three-dimensionally. Look at your company, look at the European Union, look at the market, look at the export potential of your application. Think about all these things and try to substantiate it in your proposal. Try to put in as many figures as you can, try to reference it, and try to convince the evaluators that your proposal can really have an impact in the European Union and the European industry as a whole. Make sure that you don't neglect the dissemination and exploitation plan. Okay, dissemination is very important in Horizon 2020. Make sure that you foresee open access publications in your budgets, and make sure that you have already identified your target audiences, possible events that you can attend, possible influence that you can have in policymakers. These are all very important things to have in your proposal. And the fourth tip is about a sound plan, a sound budget construction, and basically a sound implementation of the project. The first is obviously about the duration of your project. As you can see in most of the calls, we have an expected duration for the projects. Please don't just simply copy that duration. Try to build from a bottom-up approach, evaluating the tasks that you have foreseen in your proposal, and try to sum them up to reach a reasonable duration for your project. Try to foresee, when you have demonstration projects, try to foresee all the risks about getting licenses, getting through all these very bureaucratic processes that can take a lot of time, and try to foresee it in your project duration. The next one is about the budget, of course. Again, similar approach. We have an expected budget of 4 million, and we tend to see proposals submitted with a 3,999,999.999. It is expected, but please try to build it bottom up. Try to look at your tasks, look at your costs, and explain them in a detailed manner. You must be sure that the evaluator will go through the budget section of your proposal with a fine-tooth comb. They will look at everything, and if it's not justified reasonably, they will penalize you for it. So please, you must be aware of that. The next is about your overall plan as a whole and the risk management. You must do your own risk assessment, of course. You must put reasonable milestones where risks are engaged, propose other viable pathways when you have go, no-go decisions that are reached. And you must make sure that you rank these risks and foresee them accordingly. Finally, regarding the consortium balance, you heard from Lionel before, as he mentioned, be careful about the team you choose. Be careful who you bring into your team, but also make sure that you have a balanced consortium, that you have representations from industry and research according to the project needs, that you don't have any cosmetic partners that are just there to fill some eligibility conditions. Try to avoid these common mistakes. And finally, try to keep it as simple as possible. The evaluators will have, most of them, about 10 proposals to review, all in a very short period of time. They will struggle with time, and they will be pushed. So make sure that you make the process as easy as possible for them. Make information easy to find. Do have graphics, do have tables, these are scientists that will be assessing your proposals. Probably they're not fans of literature. Try to avoid a lot of text, and try to avoid really what we see very often is that you do try to squeeze, have very small fonts and increase the margins to try to squeeze as much information as you can to say everything that you can say, but this is something that will not be appreciated by the reviewer. Really, you must make information easy to find. And last but not least, please use a simple language. These reviewers are, and the majority of them, not native speakers. So try to use simple English, convincing English, and that's all there is to it. So there you have it. I've tried to go through 5 main tips that we have. First of all, make sure that you understand the topic text. Make sure that your proposal is in complete alignment with it. Make sure that you structure your concept accordingly, convincing the path that you have selected from one TRL to the next. That will take you to the innovation part of your action. Make sure that you substantiate the impacts. And above all, make sure that you have a sound implementation. Do foresee all the risks and keep it simple as possible. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I'll leave you with my colleague, Georgiana Buznosu, who will take you through the financial and legal aspects.
Thanks. So, hello everybody. This is a short introduction onto some legal and financial issues that you will have to take into consideration when you're drafting your proposal. Of course, all of these will be very well explained and detailed at a later stage when you will go into grant agreement preparation. But still, at the moment of the proposal, there are some aspects that you need to already consider even if you don't have a contract in front of you. So first of all, to give you a little overview, we will look at the legal and financial framework. Then we will look at third parties, ethics, and additional activities. And then at the financial viability check that Lionel mentioned to you, and some issues on intellectual property rights. There is huge legal framework behind every grant. The legislation out there is immense. So first of all, you have the Horizon 2020 regulation of establishment, and we follow those rules and we embed them in your model grant agreement. And then you have the rules for participation, another regulation. We take the rules, we implement them throughout the evaluation process, and we put it in the model grant agreement. You don't specifically need to read it, but just to know whenever we tell you there's a rule, it's basically coming from one of those regulations. There's also the financial regulation that tells you how your costs will be reimbursed at a later stage, and so on and so on. So every rule comes from a piece of legislation. In addition to that, your proposal is subject to several conditions that are mentioned in the annual work plan. This year, you have some additional eligibility conditions that apply to your proposal. They have been presented to you, such as the maximum funding that you can request for your proposal. In addition to that, you have the general annexes that are applicable also to our annual work plan. And later on, but something that you still have to consider at this stage, is the model grant agreement. It's a part of the documents that are listed in the topics description that you will find in the former participant portal, which is now called the Funding and Tenders Opportunities portal. There is also, by an easy Google search, an annotated grant agreement that explains to you in simple language all the articles and all the requirements that are in the model grant agreement. And on top of that, you will have possibly to think about a consortium agreement that will have to be concluded between the partners if you get to the point of being awarded a grant. Now, with this in mind, My colleagues presented to you that you will have two parts when you submit a proposal. That will be the administrative part that you fill in into the portal, and the technical part. The technical part is, in fact, a part B that you will download, 3 little Word documents. Section 1 to 3 will be one Word document. Sections 4 to 5, another Word document. And the plan for dissemination and exploitation, a third Word document. They will have right now 2-3 pages, just giving you instructions on the sections you have to fill in. And it will be your job to fill those sections and explain what is your technical proposal on the topic. Now, with this in mind, I would like to present to you 2 of the sections that you will already have to present some details on right now. And these are sections 3.4 and sections 4.2. Where does it all coming from? It's coming from rule from the rules for participation of Horizon 2020 that states that beneficiaries must have appropriate resources to implement the action. That means that what you propose to do, you should have the capacity, financial and operational, to take it on. However, you can rely under exceptional let's say, circumstances on third parties, meaning companies or legal entities in general who are not a part of your consortium. These companies could be suppliers for goods, works, or services. They could be subcontractors. They could be linked third parties. They could be in-kind contributors, or, as Lionel mentioned, international partners. Now, these are specific Horizon 2020 names coming from the grant agreement, and in the annotated grant, you have for each of them a detailed explanation. But just to explain to you a little bit, because we see that most proposals rely on third parties. The first type is purchase. A contract for the purchase of goods, works, and services. These are ordinary contracts through which you acquire goods or services that are necessary for you to implement the action. If you plan to acquire or order such supplies, you have to explain it in section 3.4. So you might have travel, you have to foresee it and explain it in there. You might have equipment, infrastructure, or other assets. Only the depreciation costs of those assets are eligible for funding, and you have to foresee the depreciation cost if you plan to purchase such an item, or other goods and services. For example, you plan to buy a computer. You hire IPR consultants to help you, or you set up a contract for the website of the project. These are falling all under other goods and services, and you have to explain them in this section 3.4. Keep in mind that they are only eligible if they comply with best value for money, so you have to keep this in mind, that the selection of your supplier cannot be random, but based on best value for money and absence of conflict of interest. In addition to that, you also have the possibility to rely on subcontractors, meaning you have a little part of your work as a beneficiary in the grant that you cannot do yourself. You do not have the capacity or the knowledge to take it on. Because it's limited, you plan to give it to somebody else who is not a part of the consortium. Be careful. If it is a bigger part, it's not limited, they should be a beneficiary because they perform work under the grant, so they should be a beneficiary. You should include them in your consortium. But if it's limited, you can rely on them as a subcontractor. You have to comply with best value for money, again, for their cost to be accepted, and include them in this section 4.2. More details on subcontractors you have in the annotated grant agreement and in the model grant agreement in Article 13. Be careful that you cannot subcontract to beneficiaries. Each beneficiary charges its own costs. You don't sell your services to another beneficiary in the grant. You charge the costs, which is the principle of grants. And then you cannot subcontract to affiliates. This is also a rule. You also can rely on your affiliates. So if you have an affiliate, you shouldn't have them as a subcontractor, but rather as a linked third party. Linked third party because there's always a link, like the affiliation link, between the two companies. They can be included to perform tasks in the project, and they can charge the costs related to that work. The only thing you have to consider is that linked third parties are subject to the same conditions as beneficiaries. So they have to come from eligible countries and so on and so forth. They have to have this participant identification number, the PIC that Lionel was telling you about before. And you have to also explain what are the tasks that they are going to take on for the experts to see, and for us in the end to see also what is done by third parties. You may also have the possibility to use seconded personnel or contributed equipment, infrastructure, or other contributed goods and services from a third party who is not participating in the grant, who is not a beneficiary, but who makes available to you resources that we consider them eligible as long as you charge the cost. So if you have, for example, a seconded researcher in your institution, that's also possible to be funded, is eligible. You just have to explain it and put it in your proposal in section 4.2 of this part B that you will have to fill in. And the last type of third party are international partners. Now, they are extremely relevant, this category. It only came about 2015, I think, or 16. This category was discussed and was later on introduced. As of last year, we also have it in our model grant agreement. It's for those legal entities which are established in countries that are not eligible for funding, but who perform work in the consortium together with you. They do not sign the grant agreement, they do not become beneficiaries, they do not receive any funding in this grant. They could be eligible in their own country for funds, but not under Horizon 20 and not under this one. So they will not be reimbursed. You will have to explain what is the role of the international partner and put it in the same section 4.2. Of course, this is optional. It doesn't appear by default. So the moment you explain it, we will activate this possibility. There is another section after section 4, and you finish with all the third parties that you plan to use. You will pass on to section 5. It's a section on ethics, and I'm sure that you consider that this is a small point and none of you probably deal with ethics. Since last year with the GDPR, I'm sure you are aware of, for example, some data protection rules that you will probably have to deal with. Ever doing questionnaires, interviews, ever collecting data from people that you process their name or email? This is related to ethics. There is a guideline that shows you what could be ethics issues. Data protection is one of them. Research on human embryos, on stem cells, dual-use items, those for military and civilian applications, possible misuse of research results. These are a few of the ethics items that you have to consider. And if you say, find that one of them applies to your proposal, you have to explain in the ethics how you will address that issue and how you will deal with it so that the research can continue and it's considered ethical research. It's also coming, of course, from the rules for participation, and we have to do the check, but the guidelines will help you to evaluate exactly if you are dealing with any of these issues or not. In addition to that, we have a request from you to fill in the plan for dissemination and exploitation if you plan to take on any additional activities. Now, this is a request that we are having for those beneficiaries, so from those applicants which are not members of Hydrogen Europe or Hydrogen Europe Research and who plan to take on additional activities in their company that are not included in the project. Meaning we would like to see what is the leverage of our program. Are you going just to take on the activities that we fund under a grant, or are you doing more? If you're doing more, we would like to know how much more. It's just an estimation. It will help us to see the leverage of the program, and we will not audit this, so there's no obligation to be 100% accurate, but just to give us an idea on this aspect. And as mentioned by my colleague Lionel, you will, if you are a coordinator, you will have to do a financial viability check. Now, this is not something that the system will prompt you and will be in red if you don't do it. However, if you don't do it, you might find yourself in the unpleasant situation that you are a coordinator with a weak financial viability result, and you will have to be replaced in the project and no longer be able to perform this role, because we will do the financial viability check even if you don't do it, and we will implement the result. So if you are weak or insufficient, you cannot be coordinator. If the result is insufficient, you cannot participate in the project at all. So be proactive, do the self-check. There's a link that you will have, so our presentations will be on our website, I believe, yes, and you will be able just to click on the link and do the financial viability check to see if you can perform the role of coordinator. This applies to these projects that are above 500,000 euros, which I think is the case for all our topics. So by default, if you are coordinator or planning to be a coordinator, do the financial viability check. And last but not least, open access. We have two types of open access. One applies to publications, the other one applies to research data. Open access to publications is mandatory. So if you plan to publish an article in a peer-reviewed magazine, you always have to go with open access. Whether gold, that's immediate access online to all viewers, or green, which means that you can foresee up to a 6-month embargo period, you still have to foresee it. Be careful that this is an obligation, so think about it, put it whenever you plan to publish, put that you will take into consideration open access. Because this is an obligation, we can enforce it. So non-compliance can also be punishable. But for you to know, and what is important is that even if it costs you more to go open access, the costs are eligible. So we reimburse you, because we believe, and it is the Commission policy, that all research articles or paper or articles that go in peer-reviewed publications should be accessible to the wider public of the European Union. These projects should bring benefits to the whole population. So please consider open access in publications. Open access to research data right now is not mandatory. Let's say it's applicable by default. You have to opt out. But if you opt out, you have to explain why. Just know that if you plan, for example, to patent something and you don't think it's going to be possible to publish, There's also a possibility to split and foresee in the data management plan that half of the data I can still put in there, while the other half that goes into patenting will be kept confidential for the time necessary to apply and receive a patent. So these are not two things that have to be one or the other. You can have both. As mentioned by Lionel, participation in the open research data pilot is not a part of the project evaluation. So if you opt out, for us, there is not one of the criterions that we will take into consideration. You will not be punished for opting out, but you will need to justify it. And I think that's it on my side.
Thank you very much, Georgiana. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but like I said, we will make time for questions at the end. Now it's my turn. I'm putting my other hat of head of communications, and I would like to make just a short presentation on communication, dissemination, exploitation of results. I have the feeling, we have the feeling, this is something, and you have heard it already, this is something that is not necessarily given sufficient attention from the proposal phase. And we realize even later that this part of the activity is not serious. I know most of our projects are research and innovation activities, but we all have to understand we do these not just to get the grant, but we do this for a reason. We have to disseminate, we have to make available to the large public what we have done, also to the community. We have to communicate, and I have to say we are struggling, and it's not only the FCSGU, but the Commission in general, all the programs are struggling to show to the EU population what we have done with this public money. We have to communicate more from these projects. And of course, we have to exploit the results. We don't take 3 million or 2 million or 10 million. We do the things and then we stop there. We do to exploit them further. So this has to be in the proposal. And why I'm saying that, this is always evaluated in the last criteria, which is the impact. And sometimes you might not understand why you get a very low mark on that one in the impact. This is because these things are neglected. And before I get into the details, in the past, and that was the feedback we were getting from the evaluators, this part of the proposal was half a page. Can you imagine half a page dealing with these issues? And that was our decision, and this is an FCSGU decision. Being also a public-private partnership, it was our decision to make a separate plan, 5 pages, for dissemination and exploitation, to draw the attention that this is the level of information we want, about 5 pages, not half a page. About 5 pages where you have into the draft plan for dissemination and exploitation of results, you have to address these issues. So this is one aspect. But I'll come to that in a moment. There is a lot of emphasis in Horizon 2020 in general. European Commission, especially lately, in the past 2-3 years, is also struggling, and it's including our program. It's struggling, again, to show to the EU public who's giving the money for these projects, how have we spent this money? And we have the legal basis. It was there from the beginning. We never enforce it. And the legal basis is the rules for participation, which it says that each participant, I'm reading, that has received union funding shall use its best efforts to exploit the results it owns or to have them exploited by another legal entity. So it's an obligation, it's a legal obligation. I'm not going to read it all. And that has reflected in our model grant agreement by saying that the beneficiaries must, when we say must is the strongest that we can use, must promote the action and its results. What is the action? Is the project. So we have to promote the project, but also the results to multiple audiences. So not only to the community. I know, again, I'm dealing with this. I'm in the field for almost more than 20 years. I know it's difficult. I know we used to talk to each other. We used to go to the conferences, and that's it. And we believe we have done everything. No. We have to go to multiple audiences. And I'm coming to that when we talk about communication, because we are used to disseminate, but not to communicate. And there are differences between these two. Another thing is you have, especially for major communication or major dissemination events, you must inform us. It is not possible, and we have seen it in the past, with our very big projects receiving tens of millions of EU funding, that we are not aware that these projects are communicating or having a big event, and eventually the EU flag or our flag was not even mentioned. This is unacceptable. And we are going to take measures, and I'm using this opportunity more and more in the past 2-3 years, and I think we are getting into the action soon. We are going to get and reduce the grant for this type of non-compliance. What are results? So, because we talk about communicating the action and communicating the results. Results are any tangible or intangible output of the actions. Could be data, knowledge, information, whatever it is. And it has to be communicated or disseminated to anybody, research communities, policymakers, civic society. We have to get more and more to the public. We are not getting sufficiently to the public. And this has a very big impact to the whole EU. And I'm sure you have heard into the news and everywhere how skeptical are some of the people or how the EU money are used. And this is because the people do not know what we do with this money. We have to get more and more. We are achieving the results. Get to the public. Tell them, this is what we've done with EU money. That's why EU is good. Because this is what is the result. And because we are, or maybe if we are a leader in some of the technologies, and it's the case for FCHGU, is because of EU money. This is not very clear to the public. And I think we have to do something more on that. And again, the most we can do here, at least in the program office, we will try to punish those not doing that, or not giving the money to those not doing that. Because we have to be better in this respect. Communication is strategic and targeted measure for promoting the action itself. So communication is the project. Not necessarily the result, but the project. When you communicate about the project, this is communication. It has to reach the society as a whole. So whenever you go out of your bubble, that's communication. Okay? Media, TV, newspaper, press, this is communication. Events, it's communication. And again, I kindly ask you, I think I'm going to, I put it in another slide later, please have a dedicated communication activity in your proposal, if possible, a dedicated work package on communication. And of course, like I mentioned, please make sure when you communicate that you say this is EU funded. This is what we have done. It's EU funded. Of course, FCHGU immediately after the EU, and I'll come to that. Dissemination is not only by scientific publication, and we talk about the publication, but also for uptake or reuse of these results. Dissemination is more about results, is circulation of knowledge and results, and enable the value to be potentially wider than it's originally focused. Okay? Differences. We have realized, again, it's not very clear what are the differences. I know we all speak English, and English is not our mother tongue for most of us. But it's for a reason that we have two words, because they mean differently. Communication is project and results. Dissemination is only results. Okay? And again, if possible, have separate work package. if you want, you can combine them for communication and dissemination, but with a clear distinction of what you are going to communicate and what are you going to disseminate. And now I'm coming to the third word, which is exploitation. Exploitation of results is beyond the project. Once you reach the end of the project, how are you going to exploit the results? And sometimes you might think, why in the topic we have required to have an OEM? Or why in the topic are we required to have the industry? Because it's a TRL 2. Yes, but that means we need somebody to be there in case we have good results to take the results further. So after 3 years, we do not finance research organization or universities to do that. Maybe they reach or not a good results and they stop and do something else. No. This has to be exploited further. Otherwise, EU has lost the money. So we need to have the results exploited. And we need to have your plan now. We need to know, in case it's successful, this is how you're going to use it. Why you do that? Just to take the money? Or because somebody has a bigger plan to use this further? So this is what we need. Again, here a difference between the three. So what is communication, dissemination, exploitation? As you can see, the first two are information about, and then the rest is after the end of the project. Shortly, I'm not going to take more time because I already went through. Communication is all the time during the life cycle of a project. It goes from the proposal, it goes to the, during the evaluation, it's assessed under the impact. During the reporting, we will like to see a communication plan, all the time updated. And during the project management, the project officers normally, when they assess a report and we pay, we normally assess this. And if it's not done, like I said, we will start on cutting the grant if the communication has not been done. And of course, like I already mentioned, before any important communication activity, we need to be informed. We are also doing communication here centrally, and for sure, and I strongly believe, we can always work together and do a better event if we talk to each other. There is a lot of documentation, of course, on that too. There is a guide of Horizon 2020 on communicating results. And of course, we also have a dedicated webpage where you can find some guidance developed by ourselves also for you to help you. This is very important. We have realized, because we are getting more and more into the market, you heard about cars, buses, micro CHP, I don't know, trains, ships, whatever we do. A lot of things we are funding. And we have realized they don't mention us. Okay, fine, that's one aspect. And the second, they are not labeled, not even with the EU flag. And this is an obligation. This is an obligation in the Model Grant Agreement. So, there is an obligation that whatever we fund, it's labeled with the two flags, both of them with sufficient proeminence, because we have also seen things that they are very, 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 very small down, and that's acknowledgement. No, that's unacceptable. So it has to have sufficient preeminence for acknowledgement. This is a frustration I have myself, and here I'm telling you personally. I don't know why other programs, and I don't know why, and I'm sorry to say that, but I'm jealous, why the Americans are so good in saying Department of Energy support. And nobody is proud of getting money from the FCAG or EU. I mean, why they can do that? It's about education? It might be. But if there is no other way that it comes natural, we are going to enforce it. On the dissemination, Again, a bit of a difference between the dissemination and exploitation. The dissemination is the push, so going out of the bubble. And the exploitation is the pull, exploiting the results that are coming from the project. I already mentioned, and it was mentioned several times, the open access to publication and to research data. I can tell you, there is already, how can I say it? I'm careful with my words. There is already an action at the level of the European Commission. Now, after the midterm of Horizon 2020, we have realized nobody is complying with the first obligation, open access for publication. There are many, many, many publications coming from the projects, not only us, of the European Commission, and they are not openly accessible. So we have received, last week, a requirement to go through our projects and for non-compliance, reduce the grant. So there's already an action going there. So I'm just raising a bit, heads up. There will be measures if publications are not going to be open access. You might also think, why? I mean, this is crazy. No, it's not. It's 100% funded by EU money. I think the EU, the citizens, the taxpayers, deserve to have access to this, that they paid. It's 100%. So I think it's reasonable that we ask for open access. As for research data, of course, there we understand that maybe patents or other things are coming, like Georgiana have explained. So there we understand if partially that might be not necessarily open. And I mentioned this plan. So I'm coming to the scope of this info day because you are preparing for future proposals. So again, you have 5 pages in which you have to prepare this draft plan for dissemination and exploitation of results. I can tell you this is the major part of the impact criteria. Experts are paying very much attention to that. And please take it serious. Please take it serious. It's not only the technical annex, it's not only the work packages. This is very serious. And again, we are giving it more and more attention. Just why it's not happening, I think I already showed. Just few initiatives of the European Commission. European Commission, like I said, it's for the whole program, Horizon 2020 is having the same issue. It's not particular to our program. It's particular to us as Europeans, I believe. And has put in place some tools, if I can say that. Basically, or briefly, in order not to use heavy language, is paying consultants, European Commission, and we have access to this service to help you to do a plan for dissemination, to help you to do a plan for exploitation of results. Of course, it's not available now at the level of the proposal, but later we would come back to that if you are successful, and we would encourage you to apply to get these consultants to help you if you are not really, how can I say, master in doing that. And this is one of the services. It's a support service for exploitation of research results. This is dedicated to energy-oriented projects. This is put in place by our energy colleagues. There is a common exploitation booster. So once you will reach the end of your project, somebody can help you to boost your exploitation of results. And there will be a common dissemination booster for the same reason. Of course, you will have to apply together with other projects of the European Commission, and you will get this support. And one last thing, we're also screening. It's an interesting word, innovation, and you can provide a lot of definitions for that. But I think when we talk about research and innovation, it's very difficult to really touch or point finger to what is the real innovation in this project and who's the innovator in this project. And we have also come to this point where we said, okay, at the midterm at least, and we're thinking we might do it even at the end of the project, we might sit down with some experts, look at the project, try to identify the innovator and the innovation, and eventually get it or help that one to go further and being exploited further, even getting into the market easier. A lot of documentation, as you can guess. Again, whenever you have time, please, or ask one of your colleagues to at least go through these documents. They are very important. It justifies why are we doing what we're doing today. Why are we putting EU funding in these things? How can we measure the impact of the EU funding for fuel cell and hydrogen? And yeah, that would be it. Thank you very much. We have two more presentations. From the program office, we have finalized our presentation with the call, with all the aspects of the call. And I would like now to give the floor to our two associations, Hydrogen Europe Research and Hydrogen Europe. And I'm looking in the room, yes, for Nicolas Brahi, director in Hydrogen Europe, who will present you this particular association. And he will be later joined by Thierry Priem, who will present the other member, Hydrogen Europe Research. Nicolas.
Thank you very much, Mirella. So Thierry and I, we represent the two associations, Hydrogen Europe Research for Thierry, Hydrogen Europe Industry for me. I think at the beginning of the day, Mirella explained that for those who don't know yet, that the FCHU is a public-private partnership, so it's a partnership between the European Commission and our two associations. So just to recap that very quickly, so here are all our members. And we partner with the Commission for the FCHU. That's the second time we do that, and I can tell you that we hope to renew that post-2020. Now, I don't want to repeat what Mirella said very well at the beginning of the day, just to explain that today you have been explained in detail what's happened once the call is published. And there is 1 year of work that starts from now. You will prepare your proposal, submit it, it will be evaluated, and it will be turned into a grant agreement, and then it will start. But actually, there is a parallel work which happened 1 year before, which is how to prepare the calls of the FCHU. And in this specific sector of fuel cells and hydrogen, the Commission has decided to be modest and to say, let's consult industry and research to see what we should support as funding priorities. And then we have a multi-annual strategy, which is called the multi-annual working plan. But based on that, every year we draft the specific topics, and this is a joint work of committees where we have members from the research sector gathered into Hydrogen Europe Research and members from industry in Hydrogen Europe Industry. This is a slide which gives you an overall view of who are our members together. So we have to make it short. 125 companies representing the most active members of the industrial ecosystem, 13 and soon 14 national associations representing fuel cells and hydrogen in member states, and close to 75, 80 research organizations. Now we will each of us have a short word on each of our associations. I give the floor to Thierry, and then I come back.
Okay, thank you, Nicolas. So the research part of Hydrogen Europe, it's Hydrogen Europe Research. We are an association of about 70 members, universities, research organizations, RTOs. And our main goal in partnership with our colleagues from industry is to promote research and innovation action, as you see during the description of this year, and which is very new for several years now, is to include a low TRL initiative. It's very important to investigate a new solution, new generation for the next goal, as Mirella explained, with the goal of the Commission with a reduction of gas emissions. Next next one. So how are we organized? We are organized within a board with a president and a vice president. And we have a chair and a vice chair for the different pillar. One chair and one vice chair for transport. I am the vice chair of the transport pillar. We have one chair for the energy and two vice chair, one for hydrogen production and the second one for stationary application. One chair and vice chair for cross-cutting activities. And which is important also is to have one chair and vice chair for the external offer, to have contact not only within Hydrogen Europe, but also with other entities. It could be ROI, it could be another associations. Next one, please. And which is important for research to become members of Hydrogen Europe Research. First of all, it's to be able to be involved at the very early beginning of the OPE process description, to be able as a member to promote new ideas for research and innovation action, and to be involved in discussion with our industrial partners to define what will be in the next call. That means also to be able to participate, to organize joint events, workshop, conferences, and so on. And which is also important, as a member, you have access to our website, our platform, common part platform and website with industry, where you can exchange with other research organizations, with industrial partners in order to promote new ideas within hydrogen and fuel cell.
So a few words now on Hydrogen Europe or industry side. So our organization is partly parallel to Hydrogen Europe Research, but it has adapted to the fact that hydrogen is no longer only a research topic, but is becoming a business topic and a political topic. So if you see our organization, we have a number of technical committees corresponding to the pillars of the code, and they correspond exactly to the one of Hydrogen Europe. So we have two pillars in transport, the infrastructure and the vehicle. On energy, we have the fuel cells, and we have hydrogen production, plus a number of horizontal issues. So these groups are completely common with Hydrogen Europe Research. Then we have extend to new fields, especially on policy, because if we want to have hydrogen as a key element of the energy transition, funding is good, but it's not enough. And in this, we have a general advocacy task force, a number of focused groups, one on mobility, one on the gas grid, because putting hydrogen as a substitute, a partial substitute of natural gas in the gas grid is a key political objective in the coming years, I would even say months. The implementation of the Renewable Energy Directive, which might be the first policy instrument which can give us a way to upscale massively the production of hydrogen. But of course, the devil is in the details, so we are working on the implementation of this directive. We look at other sectors like the maritime sector, which is no subject to regulation, which was not the case before, and therefore looking at hydrogen and fuel cell. And of course, this is a soft word to say that we work on funding policy, which in clearer word means that we fight to get a renewal of the FCAGU, and that keeps us quite a lot busy. And then we have a number of other activities like communication and events that you would expect from a sector association. Plus we try to develop at the service of our members and other, the institution or also external people, intelligence service on regulations, policy and markets. So this is the type of activity that we do with our members. In order to animate this, we have built a relatively strong team, which is co-managed by Yorgo Chatzimarkakis and myself, and then you see the faces of 6 or 7 extremely motivated professionals and passionate by hydrogen. Now, what are the benefits and duties of becoming a member? As mentioned, you have the advantage to be able to frame the funding priorities of the FCAGU. On policy, you can be extremely well informed of the development of the EU policies, especially on energy, transport, and soon the gas package. And you can even try to push your priorities if you have specific views. So it's policy and knowledge. And of course, it's an excellent networking environment. It's the core of the hydrogen and fuel cell ecosystem. Now, these are the advantages. As everywhere, you have some duties. The duties are like in any association, you have a membership fee, but you have also to be aware that you have also two other duties. One is that the in-kind additional activities, and one is the project fee. Just 2 words on this very quickly. So why do we have this? But I've just explained that we as a sector have the privilege to benefit from a public-private partnership, which means that we have a big budget which is protected from any change of policy, which means that we have the right to steer the priorities and okay, these main 2 things. And yet, no, of course, I forgot the most important thing, that we benefit from a team which is dedicated to the program office. So if you compare with other programs, none of, except for the other public-private partnership, they don't have such a dedicated team to the success of the sector. In exchange of that, we have to provide, the sector has to provide things. One thing is to declare our additional activities. So what are the investments that we are doing in order to support the objective of the FCHU, basically the massive deployment and, of the fuel cells and hydrogen technologies. This is done in 2 ways. Georgiana mentioned one way. So if you are not a member, you will have to declare this into in the grant agreement preparation. If you are a member, you will have to declare it with a system that we organize with an audit firm. When it comes to the project fee, this is an obligation to contribute to the running cost of the FCHU. And this is done in a way which is actually not limited to members, but to everybody. And there is basically we take a small fee on the membership, on the contribution you receive from the FCHU, because the idea is to share the burden of this proportional to the benefit that you get. So it's a small proportion of the project, which is 4% in fact. Why do I mention this today? Because that's something that you need to be aware of. Because when you build your budget for your proposal, you need to be aware that in fact 4% of the contribution will be asked. You will be requested to pay this contribution to provide the contribution of the sector to the FCHU. So that doesn't need to appear in your proposal. There should be no mention of this, but you should just be aware that you will de facto receive 96% of the official contributions. And here are our contacts. Thierry and I and the team of Hydrogen Europe and Hydrogen Europe Research are at your disposal. And by the way, we have an office which is just behind the reception, so you are welcome anytime today or anytime you come to Brussels to see the FCHU. Thank you.